My wife and I have always celebrated Thanksgiving with my side of the family, mainly because my family lives near us and my wife's side lives a few hours away. But this year was the first year that we were going to be visiting them. We put our son into his car seat and we hit the road. On the drive, I'm asking my wife to tell me about each of her family members. She says the same thing that everyone says, that they are a little crazy. I ask who the craziest person is. She tells me her uncle is. When I ask why, she doesn't really have a clear answer. She just says something about how there were always rumors about him being weird with kids. But she never knew anything more than that. After a few hours, we arrive to the house. The family greets us at the door, and I start introducing myself and my son to everyone. And then I meet the uncle. I imagined a creepy-looking man, but he looked normal. He was very nice and sweet. He didn't seem weird to me. We converse for a while, and the family all sits down to eat. After the food, we all sit down to play a board game. I'm having a great time. Then I notice my son's diaper is full. I get up and I grab the diaper bag. I announce across the room to my wife that I'm taking my son to the back room where all the other kids are to change his diaper. I take my son's hand and we go into the room. I lay him down on his back and get out a clean diaper and wipes. I take off my son's diaper and turn to grab a wipe, and then out of the corner of my eye, I see something. The uncle is standing in the doorway. He is staring down at my son's exposed private area. I don't want to make a scene since I don't really know her family very well, so I wait about 30 seconds for him to leave, but he doesn't. At this point, I realize he isn't going to leave, so I turn my body to cut off sight from him and my son. At this point, he walks around me and acts like he is looking for something in the room. And then I see his head turn and his eyes focus on my son's privates. And once he looks, he immediately walks out of the room. I sit there silently for a minute, shaking and trying to comprehend what I just saw. I finish the diaper change and walk back into the living room. I pull my wife to the side and tell her we need to leave right now. We get back into the car and start driving home when I tell her what happened. My wife freaks out. She calls her father the next day and tells him what happened too. He was furious, and from that point on, her uncle was never allowed around the family again.
My name is Aaron. I'm 31, and I'm married with 2 kids. This year has been hard on me and my family. My father passed away earlier this year in March. My mom took the loss very hard. They were married for 23 years. I have my own house, but my little 17-year-old brother Jake lives at home with my mom still. This was the first Thanksgiving we were going to have without Dad. It was going to be hard, but we would manage. I arrived with my family early in the morning at my mom's house. We prepared the turkey and the other side dishes. And throughout the day, I saw my brother Jake walking around. I tried to engage in conversation with Jake, but he was acting kind of odd. I didn't want to push him into talking, so I left it alone. The food was finally ready, and we gathered around the table to eat. We were all sharing stories of Dad and memories of other Thanksgivings with him. We were all laughing and smiling, except Jake. He barely ate. He more so just pushed food around his plate with his fork. I asked him if he was okay, and he ignored me. I asked again, and he looked at me, but said nothing. He seemed like he was in deep thought about something. Dinner was great, and we all finished and started cleaning. Jake didn't help. He went to his room instead. After cleaning, my wife packed up the kids, and I said goodbye to my mother. We got in the car and began driving home on our 45-minute drive. About 30 minutes into the drive, my wife realized she forgot her purse. We had to go back because her wallet was in there. The kids were getting restless in the back, so I told her to stay in the car when we got there. I pulled up to my mom's house, again, and jumped out of the car. I opened the front door and yelled out to my mom that we forgot the purse, but it was dead silent in the house. I yelled out, "Hello?" but nothing was said back. And then I heard a sound coming from my mom's room. I walked down the hall to her room and opened the door, and then I saw the most horrifying sight. My brother Jake was sitting over my mom, and he was holding a knife that was dripping blood. My mom was lying lifeless underneath Jake. Her throat was slit from ear to ear.
This story takes place on Thanksgiving Day in the late 1960s. Charles Manson was a huge topic during this time. He led a cult of people to do horrible things to others. So a lot of our town was scared that this could happen to us. One day I ended up meeting this guy. We started dating shortly after, and it was going pretty well. He invited me to join him and his family for Thanksgiving dinner. I had moved to this area by myself, so I had no family to see on that day, so I agreed. My boyfriend picked me up Thanksgiving afternoon, and we began the drive to meet his family. I'm asking him questions about his parents and his siblings, but he isn't telling me much. He is being very vague about the information he tells me. I was a little bit put off by this, but I figured maybe he was slightly embarrassed by them, and that's why he didn't say much. We get to the house around 2 p.m. and walk into the house. The first thing I noticed was that the family seemed overly nice, like they were putting on a front or something. Overall, I didn't know these people. Maybe they actually were super nice, so I just went with it. We sat down and ate dinner around 5 p.m. I remember the food being a little dry, but no big deal. But during dinner, my boyfriend's parents were asking me some really weird questions about myself. Super weird things about, do I believe in the devil and God? Do I feel like I'm a pure-hearted person? Weird things like that. I just answered with short responses. When our awkward family dinner was over, I told my boyfriend I was ready to go home. He begged me to stay longer. He said his family wanted to do something really special since I was his new girlfriend. I didn't want to sound rude, so I said okay. His family was thrilled when I said we were going to stay longer. Then they said they were all going to go to their rooms to change out of their nice Thanksgiving clothes and to have a seat, and they would be right back. They went into their bedrooms. Several minutes later, their doors opened. I got very nervous when they all walked out at the same time, and they were all dressed in pure white clothes. They all had a very large smile on their faces as they stared at me. I looked at my boyfriend and whispered to him, "Let's go." He said okay, and then he walked to the front door. He put his hand up to the knob to open it, but he didn't open it. Instead, he locked the deadbolt and slowly turned his head at me with the same creepy smile the others had. Right then, I knew something was seriously twisted about these people. I looked left and right for an exit, but saw nowhere to run. I backed up into the wall and begged them to please let me go. And then all at once, they started shaking their heads left and right, silently telling me no. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I screamed help louder than I thought my voice could ever go. And right then, the mom ran to the kitchen and grabbed a long knife. She started laughing and slowly walking towards me. I tried to run away, but the dad grabbed me and restrained me by the arms. I just kept screaming. Then the mom ran up to me and stopped right in her tracks about a foot away. She hunched over a little bit, and then she drove the knife into my stomach. I screamed again and again, "Please stop." She pulled the knife out of me. I saw her hand the knife to one of the siblings. He stepped up next and cocked his hand back to stab me again. And then 2 loud bangs came from the front door. Suddenly the door breaks open and a man is standing there with 2 police officers. The police shoot the brother and he drops the knife. They pry me from the dad's arms and rush me to the police car. An ambulance comes and rushes me to the hospital where they save my life. When I finally came to, I was in the hospital. I see an officer and ask him what happened. He told me a man was walking his dog when he heard screaming coming from inside the house. He called the cops. I never found out who that random guy was, but he ultimately saved my life from this psychotic cult of a family.
I met this guy on a dating website several years back. He seemed charming. He was cute. We seemed to click right off the bat. I'm not a stupid person who meets guys in person immediately. I usually make the guy wait a few weeks before actually meeting. So several weeks passed, and I started to get very interested in him. Eventually, he asked if we could meet. I felt like I could trust him enough to feel safe. I asked him where he wanted to meet. He told me normally he would want to meet in public, but Thanksgiving was a few days away, and he invited me over to join him for dinner. I was a little hesitant, but I ultimately decided to join him. Thanksgiving rolled around, and I got to his house around 7 p.m. It was already dark outside, and as I walked up the driveway, I noticed most of the lights were off inside. I knocked at the door, and I could hear some shuffling from inside. I knocked again, and that's when I heard him from inside say, "Come on in, it's open." I slowly turned the doorknob and walked into the house. Something didn't seem right when I walked in. There was no smell of Thanksgiving food. I said, "Hello?" But he didn't respond. I got this bad feeling, like I had made a mistake going there. I decided to leave and walk to the door. Right before I touched the handle to leave, I got hit in the head with something. I fell to my hands and feet. I turned my head and looked up and saw the man standing over me. My head was bleeding and my ears were ringing. I saw him walk across the room and to the table. He grabbed a roll of duct tape and started marching towards me. He bent down and grabbed me by the hair. He bent down and whispered in my ear, "Happy Thanksgiving." Right then, I stuck my hand in my purse, pulled out a taser, and stuck it on the side of his head and tased him. His body started flopping around like a fish out of water. It gave me enough time to stumble my way out of his house and back to my car. I started the car and drove away and called the cops. I got medical treatment and the man was arrested. That was a Thanksgiving that I'll never forget.
The story I'm about to tell is a true story. A tale that happened to me and my friends and my husband, although at the time we were just friends. This happened Thanksgiving of 1992. My husband and myself didn't have any family. That was one of the reasons we bonded so well. So we had nobody to spend Thanksgiving with. So him and myself met up with 2 of our friends. We went riding around the country roads of our somewhat small eastern Texas town. That's one of the only things that we had to do to pass the time back in the 90s. The road we were on has 3 different churches on a curve. An Assembly of God, a Baptist, and a Methodist church. As we came to about 100 feet away from 2 of the churches, My husband and I see a figure walking from the Baptist church parking lot, heading towards the Methodist church. As the headlights hit the figure, we noticed that it was tall, slim, red, and had a humanoid face with horns on its forehead and a long tail. It turned its head. It looked at me and my husband, then turned its head back. As soon as its feet touched the Methodist grounds, it disappeared. My husband and I looked at each other in horrified disbelief. We both said, "Did we really just see a demon?" We asked our friends if they saw what we did. At first they looked at us in confusion and replied, "No, we didn't see anything." When we told them what we saw, they didn't believe us. But when they saw our faces and how badly we were shaken up, they believed we weren't lying. It's been 25 years since that Thanksgiving night, and it still makes me nervous. In my mind, it will be forever known as the Thanksgiving I'll never forget.